The Rangers had not won the Stanley Cup since 1940. There was fan frustration. There were empty seats sometimes at the Garden, which was very unusual. And a lot of fans were wondering if they would ever be able to win the Cup.
By the time the 93-94 season came up, especially after what happened in the 92 playoffs and the 93 season, I'm not sure what we were expecting at that time.
The team had been unsuccessful, missed the playoffs, and we had hired a new coach in Mike Keenan coming in, who had a reputation as a taskmaster.
And I'm looking forward now to the opportunity of being back behind the bench and being in the trenches with the players.
I think I was one of the players that Mike Keenan was looking to move out of there and bring in someone he was more comfortable with, a Chris Chelios type of player. And I was friends with Chris, and I would get calls from him telling me about Mike and, going, how come he doesn't like you?
He was a lot more demanding of them, of the whole team.
Mike Keenan definitely helped me be a better mentally strong player. And then he helped our whole team get focused on each and every shift a little bit more.
Every time you looked up and there was a panic situation, Mike Keenan was going to the bench and putting Brian Leetch in.
The Rangers, with the league's best record, scored convincing playoff wins against the Islanders and Capitals. In Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Devils, Mark Messier grabbed the headlines with a historic performance. But it meant nothing unless the Rangers could win Game 7, and it was Brian Leetch who responded like superstars do.
He scored the first goal in Game 7 against New Jersey on a crazy spin-around out of the corner. Don't forget, this is defenseman.
Leetch has the draw. Leetch running it in. Leetch turns. Leetch shot. He scores! Brian Leetch!
Well, I remember a few years before I was watching on TV, and Doug Gilmour did a move a little bit similar behind the net and did that. And I was like, wow, that's pretty smart. And it just occurred. I just said, I might as well try this right now. And I stopped and spun and tried to get it back in front. I remember staring at the back of the net and seeing the puck. And I was like, oh, I can't believe that just worked.
The Rangers defeated the Devils in a classic, and the only thing standing in the way of the Holy Grail was a feisty Vancouver Canuck team. The Rangers lost Game 1, but then reeled off 3 straight wins. Leetch, Messier, and company needed just one more victory on home ice to exorcise the ghosts of 1940 forever.
To be honest with you, I felt that the mood was too overconfident. Everybody was ready to celebrate that night.
People were bringing bottles of champagne into the Garden in their purses, including some members of the media, and I won't mention their names.
18,200 fans were ready for the celebration of a lifetime.
2 for the moment. Rangers get back. Shot. Score! One save made. Rick the rebound. Score!
And the Canucks spoiled the party.
And they played their 2 best games in Game 5 and 6 of that series. And, we were back to Game 7 in the Garden.
And this is what it's come down to, perhaps the greatest night of sports history here in New York.
You began to feel the uneasiness and the worry and the dread of a lot of people in the city, and then people bringing up the curse and like, this can't happen again, this can't happen again.
When I look at the 94 playoffs and all the wonderful things Brian Leetch did, I really bring it down to Game 7, finals, that goal.
They worked the puck around, and Leetch got into a spot where most defensemen wouldn't be.
We came up, he was open, Zuby saw him.
And Sergei Zubov made a great read. He could have shot, he's got a great shot, but he slid it over to me by the left-hand circle, and I had basically an empty net.
If it were me, I would have put my head down and closed my eyes and blasted it at the open net and just hope it went in. Not Brian Leetch.
Messier moving in. Messier to the middle, looking for help. Dropped it off. Zubov. Leetch open net. Score! Brian Leetch!
Once the puck went in, I said, it's over. There was no doubt in my mind once he put that in that it was over. He hermetically sealed it.
Here it is. The waiting is over. The New York Rangers are the Stanley Cup champions. And this one will last a lifetime.
He was ridiculously good in that playoff series. I mean, he was just so bloody good. And for a defenseman to do what he did, not just offensively, but defensively, I think, is just great.
Leetch's effort didn't go unnoticed, as he was awarded the Conn Smythe Trophy for Most Valuable Player in the playoffs, an award made more significant because he was an American-born player.
I don't suppose a lot of the voters would ever admit it, but there had been a Canadian bias toward the Conn Smythe Trophy since its inception. So yes, it was important for Leetch to break through that.
I think that's certainly a big accomplishment, being the first American player. And I'm very proud to have my name on that list of all the different players that have won it. But then on the flip side, you do get a little embarrassed that you had to be singled out for such a team victory.
You had to take Mark to come over and say, come over here and hold the thing, get your picture, you know. Brian was just more concerned about the team had won. He's happy, we did our job. He's pretty unassuming for a true superstar.
A decade before hoisting the Stanley Cup, Brian Leetch was winning championships at Avon Old Farms, a Connecticut prep school known for its outstanding hockey program.
Avon Old Farms was a half hour from the house, and the hockey was better, the coaching was very good, and we felt that was a necessary step to move on in your hockey career.
It was a scrimmage early in the year, and Brian took the puck, made a few moves, beat a few guys, skated in on the goalie, beat the goalie, and sort of skated away. And I looked at the benches and the kids and said, holy moly, this guy can play. By his senior year at Avon, there was a huge entourage.
Just enjoying it right now. It's a lot of fun, and there's not much pressure. Just a lot of times off the ice there's pressure, but once I get on, there's, I forget about it and just play the game.
The word got around quickly, and hockey people and people who appreciate good hockey would want to go see Brian.
The secret was out, and Brian Leetch destroyed the competition to the tune of 70 goals and 90 assists in just 54 games. In 1986, the Rangers made him their first-round draft pick.
Taking a kid defenseman from Connecticut with the 9th overall pick in the draft could be construed as something of a gamble.
I didn't really know what I was doing, what I was going through, or how it was going to turn out. I just walked down, and it was a bit of a blur. I can't remember much after that besides putting a jersey on and answering a few questions.
The Rangers picked him number 9. In retrospect, he was the best player to come out of that draft. He should have been number 1. People thought he was a little too small for the NHL. He turned out to be a big player.
If you look at him, there wasn't that much that led you to think he was going to be a dominant defenseman. But you knew right away the kid was smart and he saw the ice like few others.
Welcome to Cheshire, the crossroads of Connecticut.
Brian grew up in Cheshire, Connecticut, which is kind of a halfway New York, Boston kind of place, more toward New York. His dad was a Boston guy, so his dad was a Boston Red Sox fan and a Bruins fan.
The Bruins were big in those days. They had Orr, Cashman, Esposito, and we would watch those games. And I didn't realize what an impact it was having on Brian, because I'd go out in the garage later in the day, and there was Brian stick handling around, and he would be saying, Orr, Esposito, score.
My dad was definitely the biggest influence on my life. He had played hockey and gone to Boston College and got a scholarship there and ended up becoming All-American.
His dad had a good plan with Brian, was let him play at his age level every other year and be a star. And then in intervening years, play up one level. Have to deal with bigger kids, stronger kids. Pick your game up.
I had been lucky enough in high school to play junior national teams, which one year we went to Finland, one year was in Czechoslovakia, and one year it was in Canada.
I first met Brian on the junior national team, and if you look at him, there wasn't that much that led you to think he was going to be a dominant defenseman. But you knew right away the kid was smart and he saw the ice like few others.
He ended up playing defense because of an experience I had playing defense. When I was at Boston College, I was a forward. And my junior year, the coach asked me to go back and play defense. And I couldn't skate backwards well enough. And so it took me a full year before I learned how to pivot and skate backwards. So I felt that when my kids are learning how to play hockey, they'll start out on defense.
He at least wanted us to know what it was like and to learn those skills so that if we wanted to be forwards or defensemen later on as we were getting older, we at least have that skill down that he found so difficult to make that transfer.
Leetch's stellar high school career ended with him getting drafted by the Rangers. But first, he decided to follow in his father's footsteps and play hockey at Boston College.
Leetch had a terrific season as a freshman. He was the Rookie of the Year. He was the Player of the Year in Hockey East. He was a Hobie Baker finalist, the college hockey equivalent of the Heisman Trophy in football.
Sometimes you make that step and it becomes a little easier because the players you pass to are able to receive passes, or the game that you see, the other players see. And I think that, happened at BC. I played with a lot of players that went on to the NHL.
He did have more physical skills than most of us as far as just hand-eye coordination, his skating, his passing was very, very high level.
Leetch spent just 1 year at Boston College. From there, it was on to Calgary to experience the thrill of a lifetime as a member of the 1988 U.S. Olympic team.
Being a first-round 9th overall and then going to the Olympics, the step was a natural progression right to the NHL from after the Olympics.
It was obvious, even though the U.S. team didn't do as well as it would have liked in Calgary, that Leetch was destined for bigger things. The Rangers were very eager to get him into uniform. They wasted no time after the Olympics in bringing him aboard.
Brian Leetch had matured into a total defenseman. He was recognized as one of the greats, and his game had reached its peak by that time.
He looked completely like he belonged from the first time he stepped on the ice. And it was a time in the NHL where there was intimidation, and Brian handled it all. He not only handled it, he dominated games. And, it was an amazing thing to watch Brian that first year.
They'll Grodnick control, back to Leetch. Leetch shoots, score! Brian Leetch, his first goal in the National Hockey League, and it's 2-0 Rangers.
As a rookie, Brian Leetch scored 23 goals and had 71 points on his way to winning the Calder Trophy for Rookie of the Year.
He did so many things that an all-around player does well. He had the ability to play 30, 35 minutes a game. He had the ability to kill penalties, to block shots, to take the body, to score a big goal, to lead the rush, to make a perfect outlet pass.
He wasn't a big kid, he wasn't strong, he wasn't particularly fast, but he was so smart. And it was very, very obvious that he was a different player.
Ninema turned it over, Lindros to Leetch, he scores!
Just being able to see the game and put myself in the right position and passing, I thought those are my two biggest strengths.
He was so adept, he had such economy of motion that he could do things in a very cramped part of the rink that others couldn't.
He has a very quick lateral step so that he can make a quick move, get himself in a position to make a play, and then make that play.
Leetch's offensive skills were evident, but his listed position was defenseman.
He was always criticized for being a little lacking on the defensive end. And I really think that the defensive part of the game turned out to be his strength.
Leetch became a great transition defenseman. An opposing rush would come down, and Brian would break it up or get control of the puck, and he knew right away where that puck had to go.
Not being the biggest guy, Brian knew how to play all the angles and how to play fantastic defense without just out-muscling guys.
He was so smart and played the angles and figured the other team out and knew the game so well. I found there was nobody that I was more comfortable, even from a young age, playing behind.
Leetch shined at both ends of the ice, but it was his emotional makeup that played a huge role in catapulting him into the NHL elite.
He never seemed to be flustered. I mean, you could have dropped a 20-ton hunk of concrete in front of him, and, well, that's nice, and he'd skate around it and continue playing like it never happened.
I've been in cars with him where we're skidding on snow and say, "Oh, Ricky, careful." And I'd look up from my paper thinking that, maybe somebody's merging, and I see a guardrail coming at us. And Brian holds it together and gets out of it, no problem. And it's just like the way he is on the ice.
Leetch rubs his man off and forces him into the end board.
One aspect of Brian's personality, his game, that you probably have to look a little closer because he's quiet and unassuming, is his incredible competitiveness.
Brian's not a big guy, but he's got the heart of a lion. He's fearless.
One Christmas, I bought him a hockey game, and Brian would play against himself. He'd move from one side of the board to the other. And then when I played him, he wouldn't let me score. My father played him, his grandfather. He wouldn't let him score. it got to the point where nobody wanted to play him. But he was so intense and so focused.
In 1992, Brian Leetch was recognized as the best defenseman in the game, capturing his first of 2 Norris trophies. That season, he amassed an amazing 102 points, becoming the first American-born defenseman to do so.
It's not a coincidence that a 100-point season and the arrival of Mark Messier happened the same year.
You know, we rode to practice every day. We roomed together on the road. And we developed a chemistry first off the ice before it really translated to the magnitude on the ice.
When Mark came to New York, I was unsure how to play with him, and he made sure that he encouraged me all the time, like, get up in the play, or if he was near me and I was going, it was always go, 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 I'll stay back, and gave me the confidence to try and maybe take a few more chances where I was unsure before, or that he would get me the puck if I was open.
It just seemed to be a perfect combination that we had together and fed off each other, you know, as well as anybody I've ever played with.
Leetch and his teammates had a shared passion, dedication, and commitment to winning. But what they didn't share was the same zip code.
I think he felt that he wanted to try New York and that he could handle it. And so I think at one point he was the only Ranger player living in New York.
Mark moved downtown, and I moved shortly after that, and I was happy. I think a lot of the coaches were concerned, saying, well, what does this mean? What it means is you're going to have a more prepared athlete and a guy with more energy and willing to play. And Brian was a great example of that. Nobody could say, well, gee, I don't know you guys moving down just for fun. He came to play every game. He came to play every practice, and that was important.
This guy was one of the first guys, maybe the very first guy on the New York Rangers to become my neighbor.
Yeah, I was proud of being drafted as a Ranger, making those ties with the city, living in Manhattan for 15 years. My wife was from the area, my kids were born in New York City. All those things, you know, I felt like a New Yorker, you know, and you become proud of that.
Brian Leetch said it best when he became captain after Mark left. He said, I am not going to be Mark Messier. I can't be, and I'm going to be different than him.
In 1997, Mark Messier was traded to the Vancouver Canucks. Soon after, the Rangers named Brian Leetch captain. It's a demanding role under normal circumstances. These were not normal circumstances, because Mark Messier was no normal captain.
I'm not sure that Brian Leetch was ever comfortable being captain.
He sometimes seemed more comfortable as an alternate than as the captain.
I was disappointed in the organization at the time. I knew Mark wanted to stay. I knew what we had been through. So I felt I was captain for the wrong reasons, but I was so proud to have been a lifelong Ranger and to wear the C.
I think Brian Leetch said it best when he became captain after Mark left. He said, I am not going to be Mark Messier. I can't be, and I'm going to be different than him. I have a different personality. I have a different way of going. I'm trying to fill his shoes, but it's in my own way.
I think when Mark came back, it was easy for Brian to give it back to him.
And to steal a line from Adam Graves, Mark, why don't you come up and put the jersey that looks best on you?
Leetch was absolutely right to give the captaincy back to Messier. There's only one person who can wear a C in the locker room that Mark Messier is in, and it's Mark Messier.
The people close to me know how much what I think about Brian. And to accept for him to turn the captaincy over and for me to accept it for him is a real honor.
Brian and I talked about that. I thought that Brian might want to stay captain and have Mark help him be a good captain. But Brian said, no, Mark will always be the captain.
And I don't think Brian and I really needed to discuss it. I think our relationship and our understanding of the dynamics between us, it was just a natural thing to do.
Reunited with Mark Messier, Brian Leetch and the Rangers were unable to recapture the magic. In 2004, faced with a lot of high-priced contracts, the Rangers had hard personnel decisions to make.
Brian was on the downside of his career, and he was not part of their plans.
Glenn called me when we were in Boston, happened to be on my birthday, and you know, he said, you're traded. And it was pretty much a blank from there. I just basically hung up, you know, after couple words and just sat there in shock. I couldn't believe it happened.
And that really hurt him. It really hurt him. It was a shock, being the first time he's being traded, and being traded from a team that he was with for a long time, and a team that he had a lot of impact with.
He was just beside himself, just crushed. You know, he just loved New York, loved everything about the team. You know, he felt part of the history of the team, and it was really hard on him.
The trade left Leetch just 32 games shy of breaking Harry Howell's record for the most games played as a Ranger. 2 years later, it was an emotional night for him when he returned to Madison Square Garden wearing the sweater of the Boston Bruins.
It didn't look right to see him wearing a different jersey, and especially a Boston Bruin jersey. I remember trying to listen to the PA tribute that was being given to him that night, and you couldn't hear it because Ranger fans were cheering.
I never wanted to be in that position of being on the visitors' bench in the Garden. It was just a blur. I didn't play good. Our team didn't play good. The discomfort I felt was unbelievable. I appreciate the support. I appreciate everything, but it was an uncomfortable night.
Brian Leetch wasn't able to end his career wearing Ranger blue, but there's sure to be at least one more time when he takes center stage at the Garden, when his jersey joins Mark Messier, Mike Richter, and the rest of the Ranger greats hanging from the rafters.
I'll be the first to sign up for that night. But he deserves it, you know. The tougher the game, the harder he played. He took his lumps, and you know, it was inspiring to play with him and watch him every night.
When you're talking about the Leetch legacy, first automatic is that he's in the Hall of Fame.
He was a competitor like few others are. And I guess you'd have to be that good. I think he's one of the most complete players that I've ever come across.
He's the best player who ever played the bulk of his career in a Ranger uniform, and to my way of thinking, the best American-born player of all time.
When people talk about me as a hockey player or something, they say, oh, he's a Ranger, or aren't you a New Yorker? And I think that's the biggest connection I got, to move to a city that I didn't know a lot about and kind of feel that acceptance and just become part of the whole New York scene. I just loved all that, and that's probably the thing I'm most proud of when I look back on my career there, for sure.